The city buzzed with activity, oblivious to the biting cold that seeped into every crevice. Behind a bustling café, John Mitchell sat on a flattened cardboard box. His warm coat and bundled belongings were the only barriers against the chill. John, a veteran in his late 60s, clutched a small cup of coffee, a rare kindness from a passing stranger. Once, he was Sergeant John Mitchell, a respected paratrooper. Now, he was invisible to the busy world. Life hadn't always been this way. After years of military service, John had returned to a country that seemed to have forgotten him. Promised jobs fell through, friends drifted away, and even his family grew distant. The years turned into an endless struggle for survival on the streets. One cold evening, the cafe manager noticed him and quickly called the police. Minutes later, an officer arrived, accusing John of trespassing. Despite years of discipline, John's heart sank. He quietly picked up his belongings, hoping for peace. Instead, he found himself under arrest. Sitting in the station's holding area, John's thoughts swirled. The cold steel bench pressed into his weary body, a stark reminder of how far he'd fallen. When the officer handed him a court date for trespassing, John nodded silently. What difference did it make? He had become invisible to the world, a ghost haunting the streets. The court day arrived, and John walked into the courtroom with his head low. He wore a mismatched jacket donated by a shelter and shoes too tight for his swollen feet. The murmurs from others in the courtroom stung as they judged him by his appearance. Just another homeless man who messed up his life, their gazes seemed to say. The judge, a stern yet composed woman, entered the room. As she read through the case files, she paused, her eyes narrowing at John's name. She repeated it softly, almost as if searching her memory. Something about John Mitchell had caught her attention. The courtroom grew silent as the judge put down the file and looked directly at John. Her voice softened. Mr. Mitchell, she asked, were you in the 82nd Airborne Division? John's weathered face lifted in surprise. Yes, ma'am, he replied, his voice cracking under the weight of memories. That was me. Tears welled in the judge's eyes. My brother served in the same division, she said, her voice thick with emotion. He often spoke of a man who saved his life, a hero named John Mitchell. Are you that man? John nodded, humbled. I just did what I thought was right, he murmured. The room buzzed with whispers. John was no longer just another homeless man. He was a hero, someone who had risked everything for his country. The judge composed herself, her gaze steady. This man deserves our respect, not condemnation, she declared. Mr. Mitchell, I am dismissing these charges and ordering immediate assistance for you. You've given too much to this country to be left behind. The courtroom erupted in applause. Strangers approached John after the hearing, shaking his hand and thanking him for his service. For the first time in years, John felt seen. The judge ensured that he was connected with housing assistance and veteran support programs. You're not alone anymore, she said firmly, her compassion shining through. John's heart swelled with gratitude. He had spent years in the shadows, forgotten and dismissed. But now, he had a chance to rebuild his life. The small kindnesses, a stranger's cup of coffee, a judge's recognition, had created a ripple of hope. The media picked up his story, turning it into a rallying cry for better support for homeless veterans. Donations and job offers poured in. John, once invisible, was now a symbol of resilience and the power of community. With newfound purpose, he vowed to help others like him, ensuring no veteran ever felt abandoned. John moved into a small but comfortable apartment provided through a Veterans Assistance Program. The first night in his new home was overwhelming. For years, he had slept on cold sidewalks, with only the stars for company. Now, he had a bed, warmth, and most importantly, hope. Determined to give back, John began volunteering at local shelters. He shared his story with other veterans, inspiring them to seek help and hold on to hope. The judge who had changed his life stayed in touch, visiting him occasionally to check on his progress. You're proof that everyone deserves a second chance, she said during one visit. John's story continued to spread, igniting conversations about the struggles of homeless veterans. Communities came together to create better support systems. John, once invisible, had become a beacon of change. His journey from despair to hope showed the transformative power of compassion and understanding. Years later, John stood on a stage at a veterans event, addressing a crowd of supporters. His once trembling hands were steady as he spoke. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just a man who fell on hard times and was lifted up by kindness. We all have the power to make a difference in someone's life." The audience erupted in applause, moved by his humility and strength. Among them was the judge who had changed his life, smiling with pride. John's story had become a symbol of resilience and community. John spent the rest of his life advocating for homeless veterans, ensuring they received the care and respect they deserved. When he passed away peacefully years later, his legacy lived on in the countless lives he had touched. His journey, from a cold night on the streets to becoming a voice for the voiceless, reminded everyone of the power of humanity.